Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 766. My opponent started off with e4 and I went with c5. And this game, I have to say, turned into a very typical kind of Sicilian battle with sharp tactics and chances for both sides. And I missed my best chances, so I put that little hint in the description. Hopefully you guys found some of those cool tactics, and I will give you another chance to look for the tactics in this video as well. Let's see. So my opponent continued with knight f3. I went d6. I'm going for the classical Sicilian. He went d4. He's going for the open Sicilian. This is all very main line. He takes, and now I go knight f6. That's the normal way to play this. You put pressure on the e-pawn first, and he defends it with knight c3. Typical move, and then I go knight c6. So this is where black gets to choose which variation of the Sicilian he wants to play. a6 the Najdorf, knight c6 the classical, e6 the Scheveningen, and g6 the dragon variation. All fun ways to play. And I like knight c6 because it's not as common as the Najdorf, and sometimes the white player doesn't have a set plan against it. And it has slightly different characteristics than the Najdorf, but it has some things in common. And we'll see that right in the next move. So after knight c6, he played the move f3. And against the English attack, which is what this setup that white is going for with the move f3, is indicating he's playing the English attack with bishop to e3, queen to d2, and castling queenside. So pawn storm against my king, and I will attack his king over on the queen side. Against the English attack, it's good to get in the move e5, which is the kind of move you also want to play in the Najdorf. So this is the thing that the classical and the Najdorf have in common, is that this e5 move is possible here. If you play e5 a move earlier, say before either a6 or knight c6 has been played, if you play e5 in this position, white has the move bishop to b5 with a check, and that's an intermediate move. You play that before moving the knight, and after black defends against the check, then you can often play knight to f5 and get an interesting game that way. So that's why a6 is played, to stop that bishop b5 check before the Najdorf move of pawn to e5. But knight c6 also stops the check. So after f3 and e5, there is no bishop to b5 check. So the knight has to move, and usually goes to b3. And let's just show a typical kind of sequence here. I think I went through it up to bishop e6, just to show the typical setup. This kind of position I've been in many times, and I think it's interesting play for both sides. Bishops come out. I get to castle. He plays queen d2 to prepare castling queenside. I usually play with my other bishop. There's one interesting idea here, which is to immediately go with a5. It looks like that's pretty popular here. I usually play with my pieces with bishop e6, and then he can castle queenside. It looks like knight d5 is an interesting idea here to kind of mix things up. Anyway, this is the kind of position I've been in before, and I think it's an interesting position to play from. But let's go back to the game. He went knight d e2, and there's nothing especially wrong with this. It's just another deployment of the knight, and he has some interesting ideas of bringing this into the king side attack. So he's not just going to pawn storm, he's going to try and get his pieces in on the attack as well. So I went to bishop e7. I went bishop e3 is pretty normal developing moves, and then I castled here. Looks like bishop e6 is the main move. I mean, one thing you can do with an early bishop e6, so let's look at this on the notation page. I didn't get bishop e6 in until move 9 here, and by this time he's had enough time to castle. And so now I can't easily play the move d5. It can be just taken at the moment. And that's sometimes a move that you want to play as black. I mean, sometimes you live with this pawn structure. That's pretty typical. They just try to work around this weakness on d6. But other times you can free yourself by pushing that pawn forward. So you look for those opportunities. And an early bishop e6 can support that pawn push. So that's an idea to keep in mind. But you know, you needed to play bishop e7 in order to get the king castled. So if you play with bishop e6 and pushing the pawn right away, sometimes you can get into trouble. You're opening up the center before the king has gotten castled. So anyway, all this is reasonable play up to this point. It turns out my next move was a little bit weak. I want to play queen c7. I didn't want his knight hopping into b5, so I played the move a6. But after that, it seems like white has some pressure in this position. So maybe it's just a little bit slow. The chess engine says I can go ahead and play queen c7 right away. And here's an interesting point. Knight b5, you know, maybe it's annoying because it forces me to move the queen again. Say queen to b8 to stay on this diagonal. But it doesn't allow him to take the pawn because I have the pin with the rook. So he can't actually take there. So after queen b8, the chess engine says his best move is to move the knight back to c3. You know, if he doesn't move it, I'll probably kick it anyway and then move my queen back to c7. So it looks like the immediate queen c7 is the best move here, and not preparing it with a6. You know, this is a very sharp position, and so sometimes one move will really shift the balance, and we'll see the balance swing in a little bit. So g4, that's the correct move here. Top engine choice, and just the right idea too. Just pawn storm the king. Now I get my queen c7 move in, and now g5 is the top engine choice, and also I think you can say that's just the right idea here. You want to force my pieces if you're white attacking black. White wants to force black's pieces into awkward squares and get that attack going. And here's the line the chess engine gives. You know, the knight has other squares, so knight e8, that was my choice, but other places it goes are about the same. Let's see, and now we can hop in this knight to d5. And somewhat interestingly, the chess engine takes with the pawn here. Not a move that white usually plays, I have to say. Usually when white has the opportunity to take back with a piece, he usually will take back with a piece to try and keep pressure on the backwards d-pawn. But in this case, taking with a pawn, you know, puts this knight in a bit of a bind. You know, where does it want to go? Does it really want to go back to e8? Or b8 even, and if it tries to do something active like knight a5, this would be a good move if I could get in knight to knight to c4. But he can block it by playing b3, and so he just has a strong attack here, and my attack is slow. It's just not happening fast enough to give me counterplay here. So this is probably a winning attack for white. I would be very happy to play white here. So that's how he should have played it. Instead, after queen c7, he went knight g3. See, I brought my rook to the d file to protect my d-pawn and prepare this push again, and he went knight f5. And so the combination of knight g3 and knight f5 actually give the advantage, or they give away the advantage. So white had an opening advantage. It increased after my moves a6 and queen c7, and but then he made these two knight moves, and the opening advantage has pretty much disappeared. And of course I have to find this move d5. In fact, the chess engine thinks I'm even better if I play this correctly. I can even get some slight edge, but most lines lead to equality here. Let's see, he pushed on with g5, which is the right idea. How does the chess engine want to play this? I think, you know, most lines I looked at, the chess engine starts by giving an advantage to black, but after you play a few moves on, it tends towards equality. But maybe there's one line. Is this the line where I end up pawn up? So let's see. If I took the knight first, he takes the knight. I take the pawn here, say hitting his queen. So the queen jumps to f2, and I take this pawn back. Yeah, okay. So this is the one line that gives me an advantage. So after knight f5, he actually, if I had played the best way, I would actually get some kind of edge. I would win a pawn here. And this attack, you know, it's just not breaking through. I've managed to trade off some of those pawns without weakening my king side here, and you know, I'm starting to look like I can make some threats against his king as well. Plus, I'm a pawn up. Okay, so that would have been best. I played d4, so I think this is the move that pretty much leads to equality with best play. But what I spotted was that if he takes this pawn, you know, I can take back, and then you know, he's taking, I mean, if he takes my knight with the pawn, you know, it's a tempo move. It's hitting my bishop, and sometimes that's enough to save you. It can buy you time to save one of your pieces, but he's got 2 pieces under attack, and he can only save one of them. Plus, I'm always going to take with a tempo on his queen, so I get some pressure against these guys. I mean, I get my material back. So let's go back to the game. D4. He played G takes F6. That was not the best move. That actually is leading to a little bit of trouble. Let's see. But this other line. So here's a line that equalizes. Knight takes, queen takes, then taking here, hitting my queen. I take here, hitting his queen, and this would lead to an interesting sequence. He takes my queen, hitting the rook, but I take his queen with check. So he gets to take the pawn, and I get to take the pawn. And this looks like it's equal. Same number of pawns, and pieces are about. I can't say my pieces are particularly a lot better than his. I mean, he still has to develop his bishop, but anyway, probably an even position. So G takes F6, I think, and I play bishop takes F6. It looks like that was the right move. And here he had knight D5. And after knight D5, you know, it's getting to the point where it's sort of hard for white to find good moves. But this is still a good move that leads to some kind of equality. Say I can take his bishop. See, this knight D5 move here shields his queen from my rook, so I'm no longer taking with a tempo on the queen. He gets to take back with a piece here. Let's see, I can take this knight off, he can take back, and yeah, once again, let's see, he's hitting my queen, so queen d6. Once again, this leads to a position where things are about equal. We have the same number of pieces. This is a little different than the previous line because now the bishops are of opposite color. So this maybe is a little bit more double-edged a position. But it's still playable for both sides, and I think really it's about even. He went bishop h6, and so the other mistakes were allowing me to equalize or get a slight edge, but this one just ought to lose, and I just kept missing those winning tactics. I just was not alert enough at the key moments. I mean, I played some good moves in this game right here. The move d5 was the best answer to his knight invasion, so I was happy that I found that one. But well, I didn't keep it up after bishop h6. Okay, well, let's see. I think I started off on the right foot. Played d takes c3. Well, I got to get my piece back, so that's pretty obvious. And then he went queen to g2. He's pinning this pawn, so I can't take his bishop. And at the same time, he's got 3 pieces looking at that pawn, and I only have 2 defenders. So he's threatening to just break through there on g7, and I played some moves to defend that. I started by taking his knight off. But there is a tactic I have here. In fact, there's a couple. I'm just going to show one here, and then I'll show a different one at another position. So, but if you want to stop, it's black to move. Can you find 1 or 2 tactics here? Okay, yeah, pause the video if you want time to think about it. The thing that should be setting off triggers in your head if you're thinking about tactics is this pawn up here near the enemy king, guarding all these squares so the king can't escape. And this knight here, this rook here on d1 is only protected by the king. His bishop is still on the back rank, so that's not defended by the other rook. So it's almost a loose rook. It's just defended by the king, and you can distract the king with the move c takes b2, and there's no way to avoid the loss of a rook. And yeah, so that's just a winning tactic for black. I actually didn't look at what happens if he takes here. I still have to tread carefully here that I don't get killed. That I don't get killed on the G file here, but apparently that works out. Okay, so I missed that. I played bishop takes f5, and then he took off the rook, so that I don't have that particular tactic anymore. And then he took back my bishop. So nice little sequence from him, solving that tactical problem. But there's another tactical problem here. So this is a cool tactic, as well. And there was another variation, there was a similar variation in the previous line. So if you spotted two tactics in the previous situation, one of those is still a valid tactic here. So with that clue, why don't you pause the video and see if you can spot the move for black here. Okay, yeah, I like this one a lot. The move is rook to d1 check. It's just sacrifice that rook. Who needs it? Well, first thing is that this is no longer a mate threat. This is all defended here, so I don't have to worry about any intermediate moves that mate me. So plus he's in check, so he has to take, and then the key idea is with that pawn again. C takes b2, and there's no way to stop it from queening. His king can't get close to that pawn. His queen is out of play, and like I said, there's no counterattack on my king here. My king side is defended at the moment, so either one of those two tactics would have won the game for me. Anyway, let's see. I took his knight, he took my bishop, and then I played g6. I had kind of figured this out in advance, how to defend against his attack, and I'm just opening up this second rank or seventh rank for my queen to defend, and this does defend. So in fact, I am actually still better here, but I just missed those winning tactics. Let's see. He goes, let's see, I played g6, he played bishop to d3, gets his last piece into the game, and puts some more pressure, tries to set up a sacrifice on g6. I take on b2 with check, and this would be cool if he takes the pawn. Then I have this e4 push with the check and wins the bishop. So he doesn't fall for that, but plays king b1. And then I go knight to d4. And that was not the best move. This is where my advantage starts to slip away a little bit. e4 was a good move here. I was looking at e4, but I couldn't quite figure out what to do after he just takes the pawn. But there's this nice sequence here, knight to b4. Well, it's not yet threatening anything, but it's eyeing these two pawns here. Let's see, and he can bring this bishop back to harass my my knight and threaten to trade it off. I can actually sack the exchange here and play queen to c4. And even though my back rank is left undefended, the square is actually controlled by my bishop, so he has no checks on my back rank. You know, he can take various things, but a much bigger threat, which is queen takes a2 mate. This pawn, once again, is doing a good job. The chess engine says to save himself, black needs to take the knight. And notice the bishop here is defending the pawn. So, you know, I just have three pieces. I'm down the exchange, but I have this pawn around the king, and my three pieces are all working really hard. So that's just a winning attack there. So e4, I mean, he had other ways to play besides that, but that's a good example of how I could have kept the biggest advantage. Knight d4, still a slight edge, I guess. He takes on g6. I take, plays rook g1, trying to set up this sacrifice on g6, and I play rook d7. And after rook d7, he has a draw, as happened in the game. The move, which I almost played, I was really thinking about this move, queen f7. It was my first choice, and I thought, well, I misunderstood something. I was talking about this during the game. I thought he could sacrifice here. So bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and rook takes, and I thought he would be getting my bishop back. But and in fact, I even thought about the move king to h7, attacking these two pieces, but rook there takes my bishop and defends his. But of course, I don't go to h7, I go to f7, and I'm hitting his rook, and I just stay a piece up. So that was pretty simple. But somehow from this position, when I was calculating ahead, I didn't see that, and I rejected the queen f7 move, which is a way for me to keep an advantage. And instead I played rook d7, and now his sacrifice at least is good for a draw, and the chess engine doesn't find any better moves, so there's no way to avoid a draw here, and there's nothing better for him to play for besides the draw. So he went queen takes g6, and I block with the bishop, and he checks here and chases my king around. The king just goes back and forth, avoiding the checks. There's no way that he can take here. I'm always taking back with the rook and hitting his rook, and there's still threats over here against his king. So he can't take like he can't take with the bishop, for example, because in this position, I'm threatening mate here. So he has to do everything with check or get his queen back to the g6 square. So that's what he does. And after a few moves, we end here. That's the threefold repetition. So that's a draw. So anyway, this is a fun game. I hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you had luck solving some of those tactical puzzles. And I will see you again soon.